Hey everybody, James here from Montages Media, and we're back with some more Unreal Engine 5 tutorials. And in today's video, we're going to be looking at animation montages, as well as slots within the animation graph, and working together to make them, make a little bit more control within how your animations work within your game. So, the main thing to start off with is what is the difference between an animation sequence and an animation montage? Well, an animation sequence like this one here with the little green line in it is essentially only to be used within the anim graph. These are more used for constant states such as running, jumping, crouching, and other sorts of things that you're going to be doing at a constant state. Other things such as like grabbing or stowing a weapon or reloading or even just emotes, which we're actually going to be using for the demonstration purposes in the video today. These are all more trigger events, and these are things that you want to code within your animation blueprint. So this is where your animation montages come into play. So the first thing you're going to want to do is kind of have an idea of what animation montages you want to, or animation sequences you want to use for your montages. So again, for this, we're going to be using some emotes, and I have some here that are already tied to the Paragon Twin Blast character. And the first one we're going to look at is going to be the emote gun toss, which is this one right here. Nice little cool flip and then a spin and catch and put away, very, very nice, very cool. So what we're going to want to do is turn this into a montage. It's very easy to do. What we're going to do is right click and then just go to create and then click on create anim montage. And then we're just going to call this emote 1 because that's pretty much what it is. It's our first emote. And we'll save that, make sure everything gets properly saved. And now if we open it up, you'll see there's some extra things that are going to pop up here, mainly the group information. So this is going to pop up with montage default group, and the group selected by default is the default group default slot. So this is just basically information for running animation montages. It's not really anything like you have to know a ton about animation and things like that to know how this works. This is very simple. It's just basically like control groups for certain parts of the skeleton. This will make more sense as we get further along in this. But in order to make sure that this works, we need to make sure we have a default slot running through our anim graph, which is very easy to do. So we're just going to open up our character's animation graph, or animation blueprint, and go to the anim graph. Now, if you don't have an anim graph, I did a previous video with showing how to be able to set up something very basic with some idle, running, jumping functionality. And how to set it up on a custom character. So if you don't have an animation blueprint and you're not familiar with how to do it, I'd highly advise going back to that video. I'll drop a link to that video in the description, so that way if you need to, you can always go back and rewatch that. But what we're going to do is we're going to go to the animation graph, and for the locomotion into the output pose, we're going to unhook the pin here and drag off of the pin and type in default. And then under montage, we're going to select on slot, default slot. And we're just going to keep it as is and then hook it up to the output pose, just like that. And now we compile and save. And now anything that is under that default slot grouping for animation montages will now be able to be played in the output pose, which is basically, this is just saying like it's allowing it to be done within the game while you're playing. So now we need to make it so that we can actually call this animation. And this is where we're going to add a quick input. So under Edit, Project Settings, if you go down from Engine, you'll see Input. Under Action Mappings, click this little arrow here, and then click on the plus sign to add a new action mapping. We're going to delete this, and we're just going to type in emote, and then we're going to click on the little key value option here, and we're just going to press E, because I'm going to use E for this. Normally E is interact, I know, but I know, emote, E, it just seems to work. So we're just going to keep it at that, and we're going to close this out. And then from the character's blueprint, so for me, this is the BP third-person character, so third-person, blueprints, BP third-person character, and then just open that up. And then right-click and type in emote or whatever you named your action event, and then it'll bring up this this command struct here, so that way we can actually call things whenever we use that input mapping. Apparently words are hard today, I apologize. Alright, so off of pressed, this is where we're going to start adding in the montages. So we're going to type in play anim montage. And before we select anything, if you look, you'll see there's two options. There's play montage and play anim montage. For now, just select on the play anim montage, as this is the basic version. The play anim or the play montage has a little bit more options, but we're going to go over that in a few minutes. So the first thing is we're going to load up that play anim montage. And you'll see its target is automatically self, which means that it's targeted to the skeleton for this blueprint. So it'll be your main character. It's got a play rate, a starting section name, which you can, you can add, but I haven't really ever found much use for this. I'll probably do a video going over more of this at some point, but we're going to stay out of the starting section name for now. And the return value is essentially just the number that you set for the play rate, but giving you an outward value. So if you have multiple animation montages set up in a chain, and you only want to set the play rate for one of them, like if you're setting it at 0.8, rather than setting each one to 0.8, you can just take this return value and plug it into the next montage. So if I take this, just duplicate it, just like so, plug it in. I can then take this return value, plug it into the play rate, so it'll use this play rate for this animation montage. I hope that makes sense. But now we're going to delete that, and we're just going to stick with this panel here. Now, from the anim montage dropdown, we're going to type in emote so we can get our animation montage up. And then we're just going to compile, save, and that's all. Now we can go ahead and actually play this emote. So I'm going to click on the play option here, go into the game, and press E. And as you'll see, he does his little kind of spin, flick up in the air, catch, and put away. Now, obviously, the guns don't stay in his hands before or after the emote because the idle animation that I'm using is not tied to the Paragon Twin Blast. So it doesn't actually have the bones to be able to tell the guns, hey, you need to be in the hands or you need to be disappeared. So don't worry too much about that. So that's the basics of how to be able to set up an animation montage. Now, I want to show you guys some more complex things when it comes to setting up montages, and then we'll start getting into the groups and slots and things like that. So if we delete that panel and type in play anim montage, but this time select on the play montage option, you'll see there's a lot more options here. So we've got the skeletal mesh component, which that's one of the big differences between this in order to make it function is you actually have to add a skeletal mesh component. So we're going to go to our components tab here, take our mesh, we're just going to drag it into the screen and then hook it up to the skeletal mesh component section. So that is the one main thing that you have to do in order to make this work. Just adding in the default slot for the play montage is not going to work. But the other things you have the standard play rate, the starting section, but you also have starting position, on completed, on blend out, on interrupted, on notify begin, and on notify end. So there's a lot of things that you can do with this, and I'll show you how to be able to use this really easily. So we'll start off by selecting the emote 1 montage. And then we'll go on notify begin, we'll drag off, and we'll put in the simple play anim montage. But now we have to get another montage for it to play. So we're going to go back to our playable character, go to our animations, emotes, and we'll have it just do this one. So we'll take the dab, we'll create it into another anim montage here. We'll just go dab, just like so, and then go back to our blueprint, and we'll add in the dab animation. Now, this isn't going to work by default because what's going to trigger it to play that dab emote is when it triggers on a notify. So it's very easy to do that though. So we're going to go to the emote 1 animation montage. I have it up there, but I'll just, we'll just open it up from right here. And under notifies, under the notify track, we're going to right click and we're going to add notify and type in montage and click on montage notify. Now what we'll do is we'll pick a point, I think like right about there when he catches the gun, I think is a good point. So we'll put that right there and then click on save. And then we'll go back to the BP third person character and then on notify begin. So as soon as it hits that point, it's going to play this animation montage. So this is where it's going to allow for transitioning on a controlled point. So if you want to hook up a bunch of montages together and you don't want to put them into a single sequence, you can do it this way as well. So if I go ahead and click save, click on play, and then I just hit that same button. See, it starts off with a spin, up in the air, catch, but then immediately puts the guns away, goes into a dab, brings the guns back out, and then back into reset. So as soon as it hits that montage notify on the track there, so as soon as it gets to here, it's going in and playing the dab montage. So this is a great way to be able to control things and have it go on certain things. So like, let's say, for example, on blend out. So like as it reaches and starts getting close to the end of it, you can have it go into something else. On interrupted, you can have it do something else. And you don't just have to play montages as well. You can set up variables. You can set up tons of different things to go off of these. These are just standard execution bins that will execute based off of what happens within that within that montage. All right, so I hope you're all still with me. I know these is a little bit more complex than what we normally go over, but we got to start somewhere and keep moving up and building from there. So let's keep moving forward here. Now we're going to start looking into slots within the animation montages. So just like what we discussed before, the slots is realistically just the controlling group for the information. And this is where using some information in the Anim graph as well as the montages coded within the blueprint start to come into play. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to our animation graph for our character. And we're going to unhook the locomotion from the default slot. We're just going to kind of push this in a little bit. And then we're going to take the ground locomotion, and we're going to pull these up here. Now, from the locomotion state, we're going to drag off, and we're going to type in cache. If I can type cached pose. So we're going to go new saved cached pose. And then we're going to rename this to lower body, which you can rename by highlighting and pressing F2 on your keyboard. All right, now we're going to do this. What we're going to do now is going to right click and type in lower body so we can get that cached lower body pose that we just made. And then we're going to drag off, type in default so we can get the slot default slot. And then we're going to drag off again from the default slot and cached and do another new saved cache pose. And this one we're going to call upper body. Now, another thing that we have to change is under the slot default slot, if you could click on it and highlight it and go to the details panel, under slot name, you're going to see from the drop down menu there's a bunch of options here. And what we're actually going to choose is upper body. So this way, anything that's selected with the upper body, it's going to allow this to run. Just like with the default slot, if anything that's tagged under default slot, it's going to run. It also needs anything that's with an upper body. So if we, for example, take the emote and, go to the slots and change the slots here, we need to make sure that it's also within the Anim graph. Otherwise, it will not run. So it's very basic. You just need to make sure that whatever slot you have in your montage is also set up to be run in your character's animation graph. So now what we're going to do, though, is we're going to take this and drag this up a little bit more just to give us a little bit more space. Because we're going to be working with a little bit more up here after. But right now we want to set up the upper body and the lower body. So we're going to go right click, type in lower body, and use cache pose lower body, drag it up a little bit, and then just under it, we're going to do the upper body so we can get them both. And use cache pose upper body. Perfect. Drag them back a little bit. Now we're going to right click on the empty space right next to it and type in layered blend per bone. And right here, blends, layered blend per bone. Now, the base pose and the blend pose are the two things to really keep in mind. The base pose is always going to be the pose that it's not running. So like if you want to have a reload animation running on just the upper body, right? You want the base pose to be the lower body, and the upper body is going to be whatever montage it's blending in with the lower body. So lower body is going to be into the base pose, upper body is going to be into the blend pose, and we're not going to change the blend weight. We're going to keep this at 1. Now, the reason why you keep this at 1 is because if we click on it and highlight it, go to the details panel, under layer setup, you'll see an array, an index, and then array elements under the branch filters. You might have to bring up the do the little drop down arrow things here, but you'll see this here. So what we're going to actually want to do is now tell it where to do the blending, and that's why this little number is important, because if we look at and if we add, click the little plus sign here for adding an element, we go to index, you'll see there's a blend depth which is currently right now at 0. The blend depth is between an integer value of 1 to 10. So that's what 1. So 1 is like basically like 0.01, and 10 would be like the equivalent of 1. So like basically if you have it at 1 up here on the blend depth, it's going to do more lower body than upper body. And if you have the blend depth set to 8, it's going to do more of the upper body than the lower body. So basically means that if you hit 5, you're basically dead center and you're blending in both evenly. So we're going to make sure to set that blend depth to 5. And we also need to make sure to select a bone name. Now, because this is basically separating the upper half and the lower half of the character's skeleton, we basically want it to blend at the spine. So we're going to go spine _ 0, 1. Now, if your spine is different from on your character, an easy way to be able to check to see where you might want to place it is this little button here. If you click on this, it'll actually bring up the skeleton for that character. So this way you can look. So if I just click on, for example, like spine 3 here, it's a little high up. It's a little kind of in the chest. Spine 2, it's a little bit lower down, but it's still in the sternum. But spine 1 is more down towards the pelvis area. So this way we can use this as our middle blend point. You don't want to use the pelvis though, because it's going to screw up a little bit of rotation on the hip movement. So that's the reason why going slightly above and choosing spine 0, 1 is usually the most preferred method. So we got spine 0, 1 as our bone name for our blend, a blend depth of 5. We also want to make sure to select on mesh space rotation blend and mesh space scale blend, because this will just allow it to normalize the animations a little bit better when blending. As well as the curve blend option, we're going to change it from override to normalize by weight. This way it'll also help just normalize the animations as a whole. Now there's one more thing we're going to do. I'm actually going to delete this because this is a custom slot. So I'm going to delete this and show you guys how to add it. So now we're going to add in our own custom slot, because now we have upper body, lower body, but let's say we want to have control on the right arm. A lot of animations that you get from the Unreal Engine Marketplace are control, like the like attack animations and drawing and stowing of weapons. Any single-handed, a lot of times they're done with the right arm. So you might want to have some control just over the right arm for certain things. And it's actually really easy to do too. So up here, this is why we made sure to leave this space. We're going to right-click, type in upper body. And we're going to use this cache pose upper body, and we're going to take it, drag off, and we're going to add in another default slot. But this time, we're going to change some things. So before we change it up here in the details panel, we actually want to go to the Anim slot manager down here in the bottom. And if you click on this little button here that says add slot, and just type in right arm, for example, you can name it whatever you want. I'm just going to name this one right arm. All right, so now if I go to the slot default slot, to the drop down menu, I can see default group right arm, just like so. Perfect. And then now we'll drag off of that, and just like before, we're going to save the cached pose. So new saved cache pose, take this, rename it right arm. Beautiful. All right, so now from this layered blend per bone, we're just going to basically do the same thing. We're going to go layered blend per bone, just like so. So the upper body and lower body blend is going to be the base pose. And then for the blend pose, this is where we're going to take that right arm. So use cache pose, right arm. Perfect. And then we'll go ahead and just hook that up into the default slot really quickly, and then highlight that new layered blend so we can add in some changes. So just like before, we're going to add in the branch filters, drop down on the index. Now for the bone name for this one, because we're doing it from the right arm, you want to kind of select the root bone for that whole section of the arm. So for this one, it's going to be the clavicle. The clavicle is always the root bone for the arm itself. Now, just to kind of give a little bit more clarification, when I say root bone, I don't mean the actual root bone. Like, I don't mean this one. What I mean when I say root bone when I'm referencing a specific section of a mesh, it actually is referring to whatever the starting position bone for that piece of the skeleton is. So like, for example, if I wanted to just move, let's say, a section of the leg, right? Well, if I like the clavicle is the starting point for all of these things on the hand, the leg, wow, there's a lot of extra bones on this guy. Scroll down a little bit further. I apologize. I didn't think it was going to be this far down. So in the leg, it would be the thigh. I wasn't sure if it was going to be the thigh or if there was going to be an extra one in front of it. I know sometimes they do so. But the thigh is the root bone for this, because you can see here, all of these under the hierarchy stop, and then it goes back out to the thigh. So this is how you kind of tell where the root bone for the specific section of a skeleton might be. I realize that was a little bit over wordy explanation, but it can make a difference when choosing the proper bones for depending on how you want to blend something. So, but again, for this one, we are doing the right arm, so we're just going to go clavicle. We're going to right click, copy selected bone names, go back to the animation blueprint with the layered blend per bone highlighted, bone name, and Control V for clavicle R. Just like what we did before, we're going to set the blend depth to 5, do the normal or do the mesh space rotation blend and scale, and curve blend option normalized by weight. Perfect. So now we have our lower body, upper body. So our lower body is essentially just our base pose. Our upper body is a slot that we're going to use whenever we want to just do an upper body montage. The right arm, same thing. Setting this up does not change how your character is going to function. Just because you have lower body and upper body and then blending it at this point, it's not going to change how your locomotion is set up. You'll still be able to go to from, use your idle and run, do all of your jumps and everything like that. Everything is going to function. The only time it's going to change is when you call a montage. So long as you have the proper slots in your animation graph, you'll be able to call these montages, and then it'll just kind of dictate how that's supposed to work. Like, for example, the right arm, because we have it blended at the clavicle, it's going to take the animation and only run it from the clavicle to the rest of the arm. So, and we'll do a quick example of that right now. So, what we're going to do is go back to BP, third person character, off of pressed. We're going to play Anim montage. And we'll just use the basic one because we don't need to use the complex version. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go for our emote. And we're going to go emote 1. Actually, we're going to use the dab emote because there's a little bit more leg motion in that. I want to kind of show you guys the difference. So if I just click on play right now and I go in, he'll do the dab. You can see there's leg motion, there's full body motion from the top of the head to the base of the foot. However, if I go into dab and go into the default slot here, and under the slot option, go to the drop down, go to slot name. Let's say I wanted to just do it for upper body. So we'll do select upper body. Now, as you can see, he's stuck in a T-pose. Don't freak out. It's okay. Just go to slot again, new slot, pick any one. It does not matter. And then just delete it by going back to slot, delete slot. As you can see, now it's running again and it's properly associated to the upper body slot. So now we can save that. Now, if I play this time, as before we had leg motion. Now, as you can see, the legs do not move. The upper body moves, the arms move, everything moves, but the legs do not. So this is something that allows you more control over what you're actually doing. Now, this is where it actually gets a lot cooler too. So we added in that right arm slot. So let me show you what you can do with something like that. I'm going to go ahead and take the draw animation here that I have. Create Anim montage, and we're just going to go draw montage. Sure. All right. And the draw montage, again, is just kind of based off of this dab emote. I just cut out the frames and, just kind of turned it into one single portion of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the default group of this. We're going to change the slot name to right arm. And just like what we did before, new slot, add in any one, then go to slot and delete slot. This way, it's only going to run out the default slot right arm. And then it's also going to mean that it'll run. We can actually see it playing properly. So we're going to click on save, minimize. Now, if I click on play now. Oh, I just realized I didn't select, I didn't set the animation again. So I have to go back into here. We'll go draw, montage, compile, and save. And boom. All right, so now, just to make sure that it's reset properly, I don't know if I actually stop play. So if I do it, now you'll see he's just doing that animation on his right arm. left arm staying still, everything is blending with the idle animation. So, and you can run this as far as you want. So if you want to have control over the left arm, the left leg, the right leg, the head, anything that you want to kind of specify and have it do like very specific things, or if you just want a portion of an animation, you don't want the whole thing, you just want a section of it, setting up these slots and creating your own and then just running it through cached poses and layered blend per bones, what this is going to allow is a lot more control over how you're going to run your animations. And again, this is just setting up control for montages primarily, which are trigger-based animation events, not constant states. So I just want to kind of reiterate that a constant state is walking, running, idle, something your character is going to do for a consistent period of time based off of one single action input. So if I press W, he's going to walk forward, or press D, S, A, whatever the case is going to be. But with things such as like trigger events, you want to have these more controlled, so like emotes and things like that. So this is how you set up something to allow for really nice control by utilizing the slot system, as well as utilizing the emote system, whether it be the play Anim montage or the play montage with a lot more control within it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It did go a little bit longer than I originally intended, but I wanted to try and add in as much information as I could. We are going to be going over some more information in further videos, such as like additive animations and things like that. So make sure to stick around. But I hope this was informative. Hope you guys enjoyed. And as always, stay animated.